Hi guys, welcome back to Elephants in the Room. My name is Nicole. I'm your host, and on this podcast, we talk about the elephants in the room. I believe that vulnerability creates freedom. It's what set me free in my life and changed everything for me. So on this podcast, we talk about all of the things that we go through but maybe feel uncomfortable to talk about. We don't even really know how to process or understand, all in hopes of living more authentic, healthier, happier lives, because I totally believe that vulnerability is what really connects us to ourselves and to others. Thank you so much for being here. If you're new here, welcome. I hope you enjoy. If you're someone who listens to me regularly, welcome back. Thank you guys so much for your support and love. Sometimes I struggle to feel excited and passionate about this podcast, and then there's other times where I feel so fulfilled and so full of passion and love and excitement for what I get to do. So I'm just thankful for you guys and showing up with me in each and every season of my life. So without further ado, let's get into today's episode, which is going to be titled, I Thought I Was Just Angry. How understanding what was underneath helped me feel like myself again. I thought I was just angry, but I wasn't angry in the way I thought I was. But once I started listening to what was underneath, everything softened. So to kind of start this episode off, I feel like I have to give you guys a little bit of context. And for anyone who is a frequent listener, I feel like you've kind of seen me go through, all of the motions in the last couple months. And about, a year, 8-ish months ago, I can't think of the exact timeline as I'm sitting down, I started having some really, really intense stuff happen in my personal life and some of my personal relationships and some of my relationships with my family. And I've opened up a little bit about it with you guys. And that is one of the harder things about navigating this podcast is obviously I want to be vulnerable and share what I'm going through, but at the same time, publicly sharing your life problems that involve other people on the internet is not ideal. And so I feel like I have had to learn how to, share enough that I feel like I can give you guys a glimmer into what I'm going through, because I feel like that's the point of it all, is that we all go through really similar things, even though some of our situations are different. And just as I'm growing and evolving and changing things that are helping me, things that I'm learning. And to be completely honest with you guys, and I filmed a couple episodes kind of around this time when I really feel like things started to hit me. I really feel like some of these intense situations that I had been dealing with really started to hit me. And I felt so numb, so angry, so bitter, so stressed, so heavy, so tense. And not only did I feel that way, but I actually remember one of the episodes I filmed, I think it was about being numb or not being able to give your 100% when you're going through hard stuff. And I literally got physically sick. I started to have my body show what was going on internally. And I think it was just too much for me. And I was holding on to so much. I think if I could describe it in a way, it felt like I was like tensely holding on to so much. And it really affected me. That's actually, I feel like, right around the time that, like I said, my immune system started struggling. I was getting sick more often. I was having a really bad flare up of my rash, like all these different things. Anyways, all of that to say, I feel like I was really, really struggling and really just wanted to numb myself out from life. And I was really angry. And honestly, in a lot of ways, rightly so. Like, I don't think anger is a bad thing. I think anger is a sign that something is going on deeper, like a boundary is being crossed. There's a deeper emotion, and we're going to get into all of that. But I was really, really struggling. And I feel like there has been a shift in my life in the last couple months, mainly probably the last like 2 months, where I feel like I've kind of started to like get my spark back again in a way. And I feel like I've started to feel more connected to myself again. I felt less heavy, less tense, less stressed, less overwhelmed. And I've started to feel more light, and I've started to feel more peace and all of the things. And I feel like it's made me more excited about this podcast. It's made me have more capacity to do the things that I love. And like, I just went to Europe. I went on tour with my partner, and it was so fun. And it was one of the first tours in a while that I felt like, or one of the first travels in a while that I felt so excited and so free. And there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and obviously my personal life that you guys don't know, but yeah, there's been stuff with friends that have happened recently, people we felt like were family, I felt like was family. Like, there's been a lot of hard things that have happened in the last year in my life, and really like life altering, changing, breaking of relationships, friendships, family, all the things, like intense, very intense. And so I have felt, as I've started to learn this, which is what we're going to talk about, I feel like it's made such a change in my life. And that's why I want to share it with you guys, because I think, if I'm being honest, I think, like I said, vulnerability is one of the greatest things ever, and something that has helped and shifted my life so much. And I wouldn't be here today if I didn't start being vulnerable. And I think in a lot of ways, I am vulnerable in general and with you guys. But I feel like this was the next step of vulnerability, because it's one thing to be vulnerable about your life story and about what you've been through and different things like that. It's a whole nother thing to be really vulnerable about what is deeply, deeply going on inside of you. Your deepest fears, your deepest wounds, the things you don't tell anyone about, because it's really, really exposing. It's really, really exposing, and it's really vulnerable. And I think naturally, given my life circumstances and a lot of the things that I've been through, it has been really easy in really struggling seasons of my life, or in seasons where I feel taken advantage of or hurt, or I feel that boundaries have been crossed, or I feel let down, or I feel I've been lied to, or whatever. It's really easy for me to harden myself to the world, harden myself to myself. And bitterness, and I've done an episode on bitterness a long time ago, because that was something I really, really struggled with post-divorce. Is I feel like I got to a place where I was so angry and bitter at the world and at life, and it was miserable. And it wasn't till I opened the hood to really, really start healing what was underneath that I was able to heal from that bitterness and that anger. And I feel like I have experienced some of that same stuff now. And what I've gone through is I pushed myself so far past a certain point that I started to be resentful and angry, and my body started just, showing signs of like, this is too much, Nicole. And yeah, we're going to talk about it all. So the emotions that I noticed, like I said, as I started to feel myself get really numb, 8 months ago or whatever, was anger, bitterness, and resentment. And like I said, numbness, all the things, constant tension. And yeah, I just didn't feel like myself. And so what I want to talk about is something I've recently learned about, is how anger is actually a secondary emotion. So it's not a primary emotion. So I want to explain a little bit about what this means. Now, again, I always preface with this, but guys, I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I try to bring as much fact and or information into these episodes as I can. But yeah, I try to bring as much fact and information and like little psychology tidbits into these episodes as I can, because I feel like they help plant the seed to maybe discovering more for you guys. But I always will encourage you guys to research by yourselves, and I am a huge advocate for therapy because therapists are the best, and I would not be where I am today without therapists. And even now, I'm in a lot of therapy, and a huge part of therapy has been learning these things. So I encourage you to seek more truth and more information from people who have the schooling and knowledge that I don't have. But I will share with you guys what I've learned. So with that being said, let's talk about primary emotions. So most of us think anger is the emotion, but anger is often a secondary emotion. So some of the primary emotions that we feel are hurt, fear, sadness, rejection, shame, and powerlessness. And secondary emotions that we feel are anger, resentment, bitterness, anxiety, and numbness. So primary emotions are a lot softer and more exposing. Secondary emotions show up to protect us from feeling those. Oh gosh. When I learned this, it made a lot of sense to me, and it also made me really sad, because I think when we feel anxious and numb and angry and bitter and resentful, and we just feel so hardened towards the world, or towards people, it's not that we're not justified in that anger. It's like that anger is usually stemming from something. And it's usually stemming from a place of your body telling you this is too much. The boundaries have been crossed too many times. Like, this situation isn't safe. You feel all these different ways underneath, or whatever it looks like for you. But what's crazy about anger and all these different secondary emotions is that underneath the hood, we're really feeling something much more tender and soft and scary. And those are, the hurt, fear, sadness, rejection, shame, and powerlessness. And yeah, man, it's really hard, because I think something that one of my therapists told me once, and don't quote me on this if you're watching this, I won't say your name because I want to make sure I'm saying it right. But she tried to explain to me that anger is, number one, not a problem, and it's not wrong to be angry. It's usually an indicator of something that you either need to change, a boundary you need to set, or some way that you've been violated or taken advantage of, or whatever it may be. Or, like I said, you have a deep fear somewhere down there, and you're covering it up with anger, because again, it's a lot easier to just be angry. It's a lot easier to just be hard towards the world and resentful and bitter, because it feels like this protection of ourselves. It feels safe, and underneath there's something. There's fear. There's, anxiety, or not anxiety. There's sadness, rejection, shame, powerlessness, and hurt. And that's scarier to walk around with. It's like, if you feel exposed in that way, and you also maybe don't trust the people around you to protect that fear or that hurt or that deep rooted thing that you're feeling, it's a lot easier to just cover it up with anger, because anger just feels a lot less exposing, if that makes sense. And I think we feel, scared to share our hearts with the world or with people, but also with ourselves. And I think that's something hard that I've started to identify, is that part of me getting angry and putting up walls, building up walls against people or against things that I have going on deep down, it's a lot easier for me to do that than for me to even accept that deep down I'm really scared, or deep down that I feel a fear of rejection or a fear of abandonment or whatever that deep thing is. It's a lot easier to just feel angry because it feels so exposing. It feels so exposing and violating to kind of show what you're really feeling underneath the hood, if that makes sense. So when I started to notice myself feeling really angry towards certain situations and relationships in my life, and it really weighed so heavy on my body and my mind and my spirit, I was just so angry. And I remember having conversations with my therapist, and this was really hard for me to hear when she said it, but primarily what she explained to me was like, part of why I was feeling so angry and so upset is that I had set boundaries in a specific situation, and that person continually crossed those boundaries over and over and over and over again. And I kept asking. But the problem was not that they crossed my boundary. The problem was that when they continually crossed that boundary, I didn't change my position. So I continue to stay in the same place and allow them to continue to cross that boundary. So what do they say is the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. And I think that is one of the hardest things about boundaries, as someone who has struggled with codependency and people pleasing and all the things, is that it's really hard to hold up your end of the deal, because what's really hard is a boundary is such a healthy thing to set with someone or a situation, whatever. Like I said, it can be situational, relational, whatever. And that's usually a really healthy thing to do, is to know your limits and to know, okay, this is a boundary I'm going to set for the healthiness of me and the healthiness of this situation or the healthiness of this other person. And yeah, it's very noble and good to set boundaries, and usually it's for protection of the said situation or relationship. But once that person or that thing crosses that boundary, it's like, what do you do then? Because that's one of the things about a boundary, is it's like it has nothing to do with the other person, actually. It has everything to do with you. So when you're setting a boundary and they're crossing the boundary, it's not their responsibility to change anything. It's yours at that point. And whatever that looks like, removal of the situation or relationship, or, you know, a harder boundary, or whatever that looks like. But she helped me understand that part of why I was struggling so much and my body was struggling so much and I felt so heavy and so angry and so bitter and so stressed and so whatever, is because I continually let that situation bulldoze my boundaries. And I was doing, in this specific situation, I was trying to do a good thing for my family and the people that I loved, and I felt like it was being taken advantage of and not taken seriously. And that was really hard for me because I think one of the hardest things about a boundary is that usually the boundaries that we give to the people that we love, and when we're asking them to honor us or respect us or do something to make us feel better in the situation, I think one of the hardest things about a boundary is that we know that if we were on the receiving end and someone communicated that they needed something from us, we would never do what they did to us. We would never bulldoze that boundary over and over again. And I think that's one of the hardest parts, is that then it makes you question, does this person love me Am I good enough? And what is it about me or about this relationship that makes them feel like how I feel doesn't matter? And do they care about if what they're doing really affects me? Because if roles were reversed, I would care. And I think that's one of the hardest things, is that when you start getting healthy and you start like trying to live a healthier life, is the principle and the realization that hurt people do hurt people, and you can empathize with someone who is struggling and who is hurting, but you would never do that to them, you know? Or maybe you at least feel like you wouldn't, and that's painful. But I also think it's hard because the harsh reality is that you have no idea what you would do until you were in someone's shoes. But it is hard to feel like you're giving or loving and someone's just not trying to honor you the way that you're trying to honor them, you know? Like that's part of a healthy relationship, is two people, you know, who mutually want to take care of each other and love each other and all the things. And so I think especially with family, for me, that can feel really, really hard when it's not reciprocated. So all of that to say, I think something that I learned through this process of trying to uncover my anger was that anger often appears when a boundary is crossed, especially when it keeps happening and nothing changes. So kind of like I was just explaining, I feel like I was having certain boundaries being bulldozed, and I continued to let it happen over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And then I'm like, why am I so mad? Why am I so angry? Why am I so numb? And it's like, oh, maybe because you are feeling violated over and over and over again. Because I think a boundary crossed feels like a violation, you know? And so, like I said, the problem there for me is that I realized I'm letting these boundaries be crossed, yet I'm still showing up the same way. And that's a hard thing to accept. It's hard to accept that sometimes you have to change your position. If you set a boundary with someone and they continue to bulldoze it and they continue to cross that boundary, and you continue to do the same thing and show up in the same way and continue to let yourself be exposed to that and give yourself to them over and over again, it's like that's literally the definition of insanity, is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting a different outcome. If they continue to bulldoze your boundary and cross your boundary and violate the things that you asked for or the thing that you asked for, and you just continue to put yourself back in the same position, expect them to do something different, that's also your fault. And I realized, oh, wow, a lot of my anger and bitterness and resentment is coming from I'm setting a boundary and then I'm not following through on my end of the deal. I'm not changing my position when they cross that boundary. And that's my fault, because a boundary isn't about someone else, it's about you. And so when someone doesn't honor a boundary or doesn't respect a boundary, you have to change positions, whatever that looks like for you. It doesn't mean you need to cut ties with that person, but something needs to change. And that was a hard pill for me to swallow. But I feel like I started to learn that in this season when I was like, I'm so angry and I'm so bitter and I'm so, you know, but I'm like, just as much as it sucks that this person maybe doesn't understand or respect or know how to honor my boundary, I'm also allowing them to continually not do it, which then teaches them that they don't need to respect my boundaries. So I'm teaching them by my behavior that they actually don't need to listen to my boundaries. They don't actually need to respect my boundaries. You know what I mean? It's like behavior is a language and we teach people. And so when we let people walk over the line over and over again, they just think like, okay, I guess I can. They don't mind. right? And so it's like, ugh, why did I do that? But I was doing that. And again, this isn't about a bad guy and a good guy and the people who cross boundaries are terrible. It's like, no, sometimes it's a lack of understanding. Sometimes, like, there's so many things. Like, it's not about us being perfect and someone else not being perfect. It's about when we start trying to have healthier relationships with people in our lives and we start setting boundaries because we start to learn our limits. It is hard when people don't understand or honor or respect your boundaries, even if they initially want to or need to. So it's complex, but that's what I started to identify as. I'm like, okay. And again, that's one of the reasons it's good to set boundaries is because I don't want to be an angry, bitter person. And I don't want to show up angry or bitter in my relationships. So that's why I set boundaries, is so I can show up lovingly. I can show up sweet. I can show up and give. But it's like, I can't do that if I'm angry and bitter. Does that make sense? So that shifted my perspective when my therapist started showing me, like, Nicole, you're frustrated because you keep showing up the same way. You're allowing them to do this to you. You're allowing this person to cross this boundary over and over and over again. And I'm like, oh, so yeah, that a little bit about that. But, yeah, I think that's what's important to know about anger, is that anger doesn't lead to protection. And so I had to realize that. I think that was my goal, and I didn't realize it at the time, was like, if I'm angry and bitter, then that'll protect me. And it's like, no, it was just actually making me miserable. It was making me miserable. And my relationships miserable. And also, like, anger only leads to defensiveness. So when we're angry, it brings out usually the worst in other people, because then both of you are like on the defense. It's like, I'm angry. Well, then I'm angry. And it's like you both harden and like feel like you have to and that's why like vulnerability is so beautiful, and getting to the primary emotions, not the secondary emotions, is so important, because I think when we really let that wall down and expose ourselves and we're vulnerable with people, it takes people's guards down. They don't feel like they have to be on the defense. And then they can let that wall down and show you what's going on underneath them, which can help you to heal and change relationships. So yeah, anger doesn't lead to protection. It hardens, turns into resentment, then numbness, then exhaustion. And again, I'm not saying anger is a bad thing. And there are situations where we should all have righteous anger. I'm not saying anger is a bad thing, but I'm just saying for you to be able to heal, you have to get to a place within you, not even necessarily with the other person, but that you can start to unveil what's underneath, so you don't have to live in anger and bitterness, because that sucks for you. That's what sucks. It's like anger and bitterness doesn't make the other person that hurt us suffer, It's like, and sometimes maybe we want them to, in a way, which is honest. I'm saying that. No, it just makes you suffer, So I think I had to understand that my anger wasn't asking me to explode. It was asking me to honor myself. And what staying in secondary emotions for me, what it did to me was so much tension was living in my body. I felt so emotionally disconnected from myself and others. And I was so tired of fighting for myself. I think it gets to a point when we ask and beg and plead and fight and try to stick up for ourselves and try to ask for what we need and try to set boundaries and try and try and try and try and try and try and try. And when you still feel like you're not understood, and when you still feel like you're being taken advantage of or hurt, or your boundary lines are being crossed and bulldozed over and over and over and over again, you get really tired of fighting for yourself. And I think that's, for me at least, when I just go numb. I go numb. I just have to disconnect from myself and everything, because it's so emotionally overwhelming and heartbreaking to feel like you have been fighting so hard for so long for change in a situation or relationship, and it's just not happening. And that's painful, because I think deep down, oftentimes when we are fighting so hard and trying to get to that change, it's because we care. It's because we love that situation or that person or that relationship or that friendship or that family relationship. We love it. We want it. But we know we can't stay in it the way that it is. And we know we can't tolerate what's happening within it as it is. And things have to change. But that's the hardest thing, is that we can't force someone to change, and we can't force someone to change their behavior. We can't change someone's circumstances. We can't change someone's deep down wounds or beliefs of you or of themselves or of the world. There's so much trauma in all of us that alters our perception of reality. We can't change that in people. And that's so painful and so hard. And I think it can push us to a point of just this exhaustion. And it sucks. It really sucks. And I think I learned in this season, when we don't give our emotions a voice, our bodies carry them instead. And that's where I think so much of the heaviness and the stress and the exhaustion can come from in these seasons. And again, like I said, I feel like something that shifted this for me was, firstly, like realizing, especially in that situation with my family, that I needed to hold up my end of the boundaries and or take space or set better boundaries. And when boundaries were crossed, I needed to reposition myself instead of letting myself continually be put back in that same situation. And so taking time and space for me and actually changing my position when boundaries did get crossed or weren't honored is what really, really, really helped me let go of a lot of that anger, a lot of that bitterness, a lot of that resentment, and helped me actually start to show up more free and more loving and more patient in those relationships and in that situation than I was. Because I'd hit my breaking point for sure. And it took my therapist being like, you need a break. You need a break from this, and you need to reposition when this boundary doesn't get met. And I do feel like me actually changing my position when the boundary line was crossed slowly started to show those people in that situation that I was serious and that I meant what I said. And I feel like that did start to actually create change in their behavior, which then helped our relationship so much. And I feel like now I feel like so much better in the relationship. I feel like I have so much more capacity, but it took me actually honoring my own boundary. And now it's like, I think that's a misconception, is that like boundaries lead to like disconnection and we shouldn't set boundaries with our family and blah, 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 blah. But it actually led to more connection for me. Deeper connection, deeper love, deeper understanding, deeper respect for both parties, which is amazing. And so that was huge for me. And I want to get into another part of this, but I think what changed for me when I went deeper is that I learned in all of these situations I was dealing with that some situations needed boundaries, some needed distance, some needed grief. That's a hard one. I think when a situation or a relationship doesn't turn out the way that we thought it would, and we continue on in that relationship or that situation, there can be a lot of anger and bitterness and resentment and pain. And I think a lot of that is rooted in what we thought it would be and where we thought we would be, where we thought this situation would be, what we thought things would look like. And we're let down. We're disappointed. And maybe we don't feel the ways that we want to feel. And so I think part of moving on and moving towards healing is accepting that you might actually have to grieve what you thought it would look like, because it doesn't look like that. And sometimes you have to rebuild and change and different things like that. And it's not going to be what it was. And so we have to let go of the idea of what we thought something was going to be to be able to actually move on and move into healing and love and bettering the situation or the relationship. And so I think I realized, speaking into that family situation, there was a lot I had to grieve. And it's funny because I've done a lot of work, I feel like, on myself and on my life since learning about all my childhood trauma and all the ways that it has affected me. But I think reigniting my relationship with some of these people, it brought out a lot of grief in me, because I think deep down there was such a desire that I had to have it be something that it unfortunately just never will be. And that doesn't mean that it can't be good. That doesn't mean that it can't still be loving and, all the things. But I think I had to really grieve the fact that, like, I'll never have the type of relationship with that person that I thought I was going to have, or that as a kid I deeply desired so much. So what does that look like now? And I think I've, said that before, but yeah, I think I had to get to a point where I realized, like, I have parents and I love them, but, like, I've always wanted, like, a mom and a dad that, like, take care of me and all the things. And yeah, it's like my dynamic will never be what I desired as a child. It doesn't mean that it can't be good, and it doesn't mean that I can't have good relationships with them and love them and all the things, but it will never be what I wanted it to be deep down, and I think I had to grieve that. And so I had to allow a space to let myself grieve, because I think I was covering up some of that grief with anger, if that makes sense. So yeah, sometimes you need space. That emotion needs space to be seen. It needs to be heard, and you need compassion for yourself. And it was really, I remember when I was going through a lot of this, and I was so angry and mad, and then I just was like an emotional mess and crying and sad and all the things, as I started grieving these things. And just like when you start to understand what you're feeling internally, and like a deep wound or a fear, a pain that you're kind of covering up with anger, even if you don't realize it, it's really hard. It's really sad. But when you really feel that emotion, for me at least, it becomes so much easier. And I really feel like a huge part of healing, at least for me, is just allowing myself to feel those things, and also to be seen in those things and to be heard in those things. And like I said, I think too, I'm also working with another therapist. I'm in all of the therapy, guys, okay? I'm in regular therapy. I'm in couples therapy. And it's the freaking best. I love it. I love all my therapists. But yeah, I think I had hardened my heart so much in this last season, and I thought that I was protecting myself by doing that. But in order to actually like start healing and feeling like myself again, I had to really let those walls down and really be vulnerable about what was underneath the hood. And a lot of that was fear of abandonment or fear of not being enough, or a deep wound of wishing that I could have, normal parents or parents that took care of me that I didn't feel like I have to take care of. And just these deeper seated wounds and pains and hurts. And as I've started to let myself see those and feel those, and also other people around me, safe people around me, not everyone. You don't need to expose yourself to everyone and your deep emotions. You want to do it with safe people who make you feel safe. But even just myself, exposing them to myself, it has been so relieving. So much relief has happened in my heart and in my life as I've really just let myself feel those deep things that hurt me. And it's funny because that's like one of the things that one of my therapists does is she'll ask me to like explain what's going on in my body when I'm feeling a certain type of way. Like, oh, what do you feel? And for me, one of the ways my body kind of like shows up when I'm triggered or hurt or anything is I'll start to feel kind of a pit in my stomach, like tightness in my chest, and like my throat feels like it's closing, and I'll just feel very like heavy and intense. And she'll kind of pick at those things and be like, okay, like, but what's underneath? And if your anger could say something, what would it say? And she'll kind of speak to the little girl in me. And then she'll have me speak back to the little girl in me. And that has been really hard and exposing. And it's crazy, like when she asked me those things and when she's like, what's going on underneath? And if you could talk to that little girl right now that's hurt, that feels that fear of abandonment or feels that fear of not being enough or whatever, what would you say to her? And so she like makes me speak to the little girl in me. But it's been so healing for me. So healing, and has released so much. But yeah, I think, like I said, I've been vulnerable in my life, but I think this is a new level of vulnerability that I'm getting to, and it just makes me love vulnerability even more, because I always swear I love vulnerability, but like really, really, this is another layer of it that I feel like I'm experiencing and dealing with that has been so freeing for me. And yeah, I think it's just naming what actually hurts deep down underneath the surface, underneath the anger, because anger is a secondary emotion. When we're angry, it's because something deeper is going on. And we feel like anger is going to protect us. We feel like that emotion is going to protect us because those deep, deep fears and emotions that we have feel so much more scary and so much more exposing and so much more vulnerable. But in order to get past the anger, we have to get under the hood. We have to see what's underneath. We have to let go of the fear of being honest and vulnerable. We also have to let ourselves feel those emotions. And sometimes we've been shoving them away and suppressing them for so long. It feels so scary to think about showing them. It feels so exposing. It feels so intense. But that is what really for me has promoted so much healing and release in my life. It's like if you're grabbing onto something like this so tight, it's so stressful, there's so much friction. It's like when you finally let it go, it's like everything calms down. Everything just releases. And I feel like it's been the only thing that's really made me feel like myself again, which is important. And I think too, it's really easy. I want to speak to this because I think this is really important. I think it's really easy when we're feeling really angry and numb emotionally. We're anxious. We've hit our breaking point. We know it's just been too much and we've been trying to fight for ourselves in a situation or a relationship or whatever it may be. And we hit this point where we just feel like, if this could just change, if their behavior could change, if this situation could change, if the relationship could change, that's the only thing that will make me feel better. That's the only thing that will make me not angry and bitter and exhausted. And what I had to accept is that it's really not about that. It's about what you do with that anger. And it's about exposing what's underneath the hood, the deep feeling and emotion, the primary emotion that is being covered up by the secondary emotion, which is anger. Letting that feeling, letting that emotion be seen, heard, loved, and validated. That is what has made the biggest change and biggest release within me. I thought my situations had to change for me to start to heal and for me to start to feel like myself again and for me to not feel numb anymore and for me to not be angry anymore. But what I didn't realize is that I just needed to let that emotion, that pain, be seen, heard, and validated by me and sometimes by the other person. And also, sometimes the situation doesn't need to change. You need to change your position. And part of that is understanding and knowing that when a boundary line that you've set is bulldozed over and over again or crossed over and over again, and you continue showing up the same way, you continue allowing them to cross that boundary, it's not like, oh, I'm just going to feel better when they change. No, you're going to feel better when you actually respect yourself enough to follow through on the boundaries you set with people. And when they cross them, you change your position. You take space. You actually follow through on your end of the deal. That's what's going to make you feel peace. That's what's going to release the anger. That's what's going to make you show up better in those relationships. Because when we're putting so much of our emotional well-being and so much weight into when this situation changes or when this person changes or when this behavior changes in front of me, then I'll be good. No, you just need to reposition. You just need to let that deep wound be seen. You just need to feel that primary emotion, not that secondary emotion of anger. And then you're actually going to feel that release. You're actually going to feel peace. You're actually going to start healing regardless of what your outside circumstances look like and regardless of what those relationships look like in your life. And oftentimes when we're able to do that for ourselves, we can not only show up in the relationship or the situation better, but it also encourages and creates change within them and within that situation. Because when we're angry and we're so on the defense, it's so easy for someone else to be on the defense. But when we let those walls down, it creates a safe space for both people to actually start to show up really, really authentically and really, really expose what they're hurting or what's hurting within them deep, deep down and causing some of the problems in the situation or the relationship. So that's what I've been learning. So don't put so much pressure on the people around you or the situations around you to change and to adapt and to adjust to heal you or to take care of you or to change you. Like, I think we've all been victim to that. Like, once this changes or once that changes or once this situation looks different, then I'll be happy, then I'll be good. But it's like, no, sometimes there needs to be healing that takes place within you because of the work that you do. Or the work that you guys do, you know? So letting myself really brought me peace and not chaos. So, and that's my whole point of saying all of this is I felt like a couple months ago when I really was struggling so much, I was like, okay, I just won't feel better until this is here and that's here and this is here and that's here. And to be honest, in all of the situations I've been dealing with, there has been so much change, and there's been good things that have happened, but it's not what it's not what I thought was like, okay, yeah, this is what needs to change, and then I'll just be happier, this or this or that. Like, all of these situations are different than I thought they would look, but they're all getting better, and I feel so much better within them because of, I feel like, changes I've made within myself, and also just allowing me to feel and grieve and deal with these deep like emotions within me, if that makes sense. So I think here's my like gentle and loving advice to you guys is, if you're going through a season where you just feel like you are so exhausted and angry and bitter and resentful, and you're just so tired, and you feel like you've lost your spark, you feel like you don't know who you are anymore, you feel like so disconnected from yourself, I just want to encourage you guys that you're, number one, you're not alone. And I think it is so important to get down to the root of these things and of these feelings, because I know it's so cliche to say it, but to heal it, I feel like we really have to feel it. And really uncovering that primary emotion instead of focusing on the secondary emotion has really been a game changer for me, and has really helped me a lot start to be less bitter and less angry and feel more like myself. And I think an easy way that we can do this is, if you're feeling this way, ask yourself, what am I feeling on the surface? What might this be protecting deep down? And what does that deeper feeling need right now? And sometimes that deeper feeling needs a boundary. It needs rest. It needs honesty. It needs a space to be seen. And learning how to do that is such a game changer. So my advice to you, and what I'm learning, is that you don't have to fix it. You just have to make room for it. I think we just always feel like we have to fix things in order to feel better. And sometimes it's not about fixing things. It's about feeling things. And that changes everything. So make room for those deep things within you. Make space for them. And tell people that are safe, like, there's people in our lives that are like safe people, right? And hi Coco, my little girl, my little Coco, she's one of my safe people. But my therapist, my partner, like some friends in my life are really safe people that I can unveil these emotions with, and they can understand me and see me, which I've never felt safe. As a kid, I didn't feel safe. And so it's been really healing to feel safe with someone and to feel safe with people and to start to unveil these things, even though it's still scary sometimes. Yeah. So peace for me did not come from changing everyone else. It came from listening to myself. And if you felt hardened, tired, or disconnected, maybe nothing is wrong with you. Maybe there's just something waiting to be felt. I'm going to say that again because that's important. If you felt hardened, tired, disconnected, numb, you feel like you have hit your breaking point, maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Maybe there's just something that is waiting to be felt, that you needed to allow the space to really be felt. Okay, I love you guys. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I hope that, it just provides a space for you to feel seen and heard. And I just hope that you're not alone, and that life is hard. Life is hard. Life is hard. And as we grow up, and like as I grow up, and it's crazy, guys, in like a month I'm going to be 27, which is unbelievable. But I'm not scared of it anymore like I used to be. I feel like the older I get, the more I understand myself, the more I understand others, the more peace I have. And I'm thankful to continue to be on this journey of trying to understand myself, understand my wounds, understand my life, understand how I can show up for myself and others, understand how I can love myself. And it's a commitment and it's a journey, but I love it. And I'm so thankful for it. And I'm so thankful for all my therapists. I can't say their names, but I love them. They're the best. And I'm so thankful for my family, my friends, my partner, my little puppy, all my lovely people in my life. And I'm so thankful for my life and how God has blessed me with this little angel and my other little angel who's not home right now. He's golfing, David. And my therapist, my like, what's it called? They're like my guardian angels. I can't think. And all my lovely girlfriends that I love. Anyways, I love you guys so much. Like I said, if you like this episode today, you can see more if you want to see more. I have so many episodes and super exciting. I actually just very recently, guys, uploaded a lot of my episodes into video format on Spotify, which is really cool. So you can watch and listen on Spotify instead of having to go to YouTube. Makes your life a lot easier. And you guys know, if you want to support me, you can rate this podcast. That helps me a ton. Rate and review it. Send it to a friend. Send it to your mom. Send it to your dad. Send it to whoever. Share my short clips on your story. Follow me on any of my social media accounts. I have TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. All are Elephants in the Room with 2 S's. And yes, I love you guys so much. Without further ado, I will ask what elephants are in your room, and I will talk to you guys in 2 weeks.